Hello. How do we compete with artificial intelligence? How can we collaborate with it? Undoubtedly, artificial intelligence is on the threshold. If you think it has already arrived, you're mistaken. It is knocking on our doors, being held back because it is feared, and not without reason, as I explained in the previous video. I recently read that things like ChatGPT, also called generative artificial intelligence, have reduced the cost of knowledge to zero, like the internet, which also reduced the cost of accessing information. From artificial intelligence, you immediately receive knowledge, and the quality of this knowledge equally depends on the system's power, its training, and importantly, the quality of your query. I can't say outright that robots give silly answers to silly questions, but it's almost like that. So, if someone needs new knowledge, they no longer need to ask a knowledgeable person, but can simply ask a knowledgeable robot, if there is one, or when there will be one. I have talked enough about the horrors awaiting the most knowledgeable among us, and about the differences between the knowledgeable and the thinking. By the way, this was in different videos. It's time to think about how to turn potential competition with artificial intelligence into potential collaboration. There is time to prepare, as all new smart robots are being introduced cautiously, and we will have time to adapt. As usual, I spent a couple of days on the internet trying to understand the thoughts of smart people on this matter at various Harvards and Stanfords. To my disappointment, I mostly saw teachings in the style of personal development coaches and religious sermons, and mysterious reflections in the spirit of "we'll live and see," and speculations. For the most part, they are now selling us the prospects of using artificial intelligence and the risks of its development. We've briefly touched on the prospects. It seems like we figured out the risks. It is clear that artificial intelligence will either compete or collaborate with the intelligent. So, what should we, the intelligent, do to be up to the task? We need to study artificial intelligence. By the way, I can call it a robot or neural network. In the future, since generative AI is a neural network. Well, so I don't have to write two long words all the time. First of all, we need to understand how it works, what it can do, what it cannot do, and what its strengths and weaknesses are. I note that we need to study robots not as competitors, but as comrades and fellow travelers on a difficult journey. It's important to understand how and in what ways you can help each other. This is an important principle. A stance like, it can't do that, but I can, so I don't want to know about it, is not suitable. A more appropriate approach would be, the robot can't do this, but I can. However, the robot does this and this better than me. How can I use the robot's strengths to effectively utilize my own abilities? And also, I need help with this and that. The robot can do it, but not very well. How can I teach the robot to do it better? Obviously, for this, it's sufficient to know about the workings of artificial intelligence at about the level of my videos, plus read the description and reviews of the specific system you might use. A whole field of knowledge has emerged: prompt engineering. I would translate this as query design. Remember, I mentioned earlier about silly answers to silly questions? There are many articles on this discipline, entire libraries of queries as examples for study. Keep in mind that the free versions of generative robots are deliberately dumbed down to nudge you towards a subscription. Well, education is rarely free, and $20 per month for practical study of the smartest chatbot is not too high a price. This is just an example. Other options are possible. It's very important to distinguish between reality and speculation. Sensationalism sells content well, but it usually relies on assumptions and even outright fantasies of the "what if this happens" type. Don't be swayed by loud headlines and fantasies of famous characters. Acquire practical knowledge and test it in practice. Today, generative artificial intelligence can offer solutions and assess the risks of implementing solutions. However, like any intelligence, it is limited by its education. Moreover, a robot can't suggest anything that wouldn't directly stem from the experience it has studied. A robot will offer you more known solutions and known risks than you know. What remains for you is what the robot can't do. Critically review all these solutions and risks and look beyond previous experience. Try to find a new unknown solution. Not every time will you succeed in this. Most likely, you will rarely find something genuinely new. But in each case, you should consider even seemingly absurd options so as not to miss the opportunity to move forward. Unlike treading water, which is what applying known solutions amounts to. Artificial intelligence will free you from searching for known solutions and leave you their critical assessment. It leaves you to search for unknown solutions. The development of critical thinking is supported by successful methods for different age and educational groups. It makes sense to start this now, or perhaps even first and foremost. Get rid of biases and the notorious group identifications. No, I'm not calling to get rid of them entirely, as that's too difficult and inconvenient. Rid yourself of biases, at least in your professional field. Our professional environment imposes group beliefs on us, like what is good and what is bad. These people will understand, but those will never. Doing this is right, but that is not. Keep in mind that generative artificial intelligence has as many biases as a stray dog has fleas. It was trained by people of a certain age, educational, ideological, gender, and cultural group, and each group identification carries its own biases. You need to learn to see biases and their consequences in the robot's responses. For this, you need to be free of them, at least in the area where you interact with the robot. I said in another video that often the robot should not give its recommendations directly to their subject because the robot lacks and cannot have empathy and responsibility. I won't repeat that a human capable of critical thinking should evaluate its recommendations before issuing them. Become a representative and mediator between the robot and other people. Develop your empathy and sense of responsibility as traits that artificial intelligence lacks, and critical thinking on both sides, as I said. We all know that hearing a person and understanding them are very different things. A robot can hear, and it will understand everything if there are no emotions or backstory behind the words. As one movie character played by a famous bard said, show sincere interest in a person. Because one clarification or leading question can change the meaning of what was said. I say this authoritatively, as someone who has spent 30 years gathering requirements from real people for real systems. This understanding of perception behind the query will help choose from the robot-proposed solutions, if not the most likely, then the most appropriate one. Excuse the complex sentence. Think about it, it's worth it. To catch the robot in shoddy work, you need to know the truth. Well, if not exactly the truth, then at least an alternative opinion. A well-trained robot will give out the most widely accepted version, the most common and popular one, and several other options in descending order of popularity. You need to choose the most suitable option for your case, and even with critical thinking and empathy, you also need to have information on the matter. This means you need to gather data, summarize it, and apply your experience and education. I have a video on working with information. Take a look. Of course, you won't be doing such work often. Otherwise, why would you need an information robot? But in critical cases, when the decision is important and the robot seems to be spouting nonsense, you can't do without applying your good old brains. If your mindset and preferences allow, make artificial intelligence your profession. Estimates suggest that by 2030, the volume of the industry related to artificial intelligence will reach nearly $2 trillion. This is a case where you need to latch onto the locomotive before it picks up speed. There are plenty of options. Maybe not the development of neural networks themselves, their mathematics and logic, or the development of deep machine learning. Although this is the most appealing, it's not for everyone. Smart corporate use robots are already being implemented, and personal assistants are on the way. A trend is emerging for specialized robots, meaning instead of one universal monster, there will be a proliferation of industry-specific little monsters. All of these will need to be implemented and trained, which means preparing data. And then again, train, and train. In the notorious second stage of training large language models, which I talked about in another video, robots are trained by ordinary, educated, and competent people, teaching them to communicate with other people. This is directly about you. Then there's the aforementioned prompt engineering, query development, which I talked about earlier. Practice is growing where the end user uses a query wizard, providing only the essence, and the query settings are taken from a database compiled by engineers. There's also the identification and specification of routine processes that are subject to automation, and then there are various niche applications. There's a lot to do, plenty of opportunities to expand. Well, that's roughly it. I would start with this. I should add creativity to the list, but that's bold. Not everyone can be creators, and I haven't encountered effective methodologies for turning any person into a creator. But if we are cautious and mitigate risks, as I explained in another video, and if we ourselves learn to use artificial intelligence as a tool, then we will definitely increase the interval of the development spiral. If you understand what I mean, as one hobbit said, I'm not hinting at future topics, let them be a surprise, but they will definitely be there. Subscribe, it will be interesting and useful.